It must be the gettleman factor. The Giants experienced the best possible ending to the worst possible season, even though they almost screwed up by beating Washington on Sunday, but still wound up with the second pick in the April 26th draft when the Colts finished off their victory over the Texans a few minutes earlier. Happy New Year, Big Blue. Giants keep them, dump them. The last time the Giants had the second overall pick was 1981. They selected Lawrence Taylor. That worked out just fine. It only means something if you pick the right guy, John Mara said in the middle of the locker room after the Giants won their first NFC East game of the season 18-10 before an intimate and frozen MetLife gathering. The paid attendance was announced at 76,269, but there were only about 38,000 in the house before fans started to head for the exits early. Even so, Mara had a smile on his face and was in a good mood for one of the few times this season. Howard Simmons TNS. The Giants finished 313 instead of 214, it just sounds better. More importantly, owning the second pick puts them in a position of power, especially if quarterbacks Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen apply for early eligibility by the January 15th deadline. If the Colts had lost to Houston, the Giants would have dropped down to the third spot and Indy would have jumped up to number 2. With the expected return of Andrew Luck next season, the Colts would have likely traded the pick if Darnold and Rosen came out, possibly to the Giants, possibly to the Jets. Now the Giants are guaranteed to get one of them if they are both in the draft. It's nice to win the game, Mara said. It was also nice for the Colts to win. Gettleman, who spent a minute talking to Eli Manning after the game with the promise they will soon get together, didn't want to comment on his thoughts about having such a quality pick to work with in his first draft. I'm going to leave it alone for now, he said. It would have been typical of this season if the Giants finally won their third game and took themselves out of position to potentially get their next franchise quarterback. So as Gettleman watched from booth 4 on the press box level 2 days after he was hired as the general manager, the start of a new era for Big Blue got off to a promising start. Now comes the tough part: fixing this dysfunctional team. Bill Kistrounepp. The Daily News learned Sunday that Gettleman will run the draft and free agency and not hire anybody to replace Mark Ross, the vice president of player evaluation, whom Gettleman fired Saturday. Although Gettleman worked with Ross in his prior time with the Giants, Ross was closely associated with former GM Jerry Reese, and Gettleman decided to take the personnel department in another direction. Mara and Steve Tisch hired him to pick the players, so he will pick the players. The coaching interviews will start this week with assistants on playoff teams with a first-round buyer whose seasons have ended. Mara will send out the consent forms Monday with he and Gettleman ready to hit the road. At the top of the list are Patriots coordinators Josh McDaniels and Matt Patricia in a hotel in the Gillette Stadium parking lot in Foxborough, assuming they each are interested in the job. Texans coach Bill O'Brien's future, due to friction with GM Rick Smith, became a bit less uncertain. Smith announced after the Texans' loss in Indy that he will take an extended leave of absence to help care for his wife, who was recently diagnosed with breast cancer. Now it seems likely O'Brien will remain with the Texans. He has 1 year left on his contract, so he could wind up with an extension. But if things don't work out, the Giants will be very interested in speaking to him. Vikings offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur is under the first level of McDaniels, Patricia and O'Brien. Panthers defensive coordinator Steve Wilks, held in high regard by Gettleman from his 4 years as the Panthers GM, will also likely get an interview. The best news coming out of Sunday for sure was clinching the number 2 pick. Even though Mara and Gettleman both have said they want Manning to return in 2018, and Manning said after the game he 100% wants to be back and doesn't want to play anywhere else, he will be 37 on Wednesday and had a bad season in 2017. Seth Wenigap. The Giants have so many needs, but with an aging QB and no idea if Davis Webb can play, he dressed for the first time Sunday and, of course, didn't take a snap, they will likely take the QB that the Browns leave on the table. Cleveland finished 0-6 and will pick first, and with John Dorsey, a veteran football executive now in charge, they are virtually guaranteed to take a QB. If Darnold and Rosen come out, the Giants can take whoever is left. When a team is 313, it's preferable to draft a player at the top of the first round who can provide immediate help, but it's also important to invest in a potential franchise QB. If only one of the QBs comes out and the Browns take him, then the Giants can stay at number 2 and take Penn State running back Saquon Barkley or North Carolina State Bradley Chubb, or trade down a few spots to get either Notre Dame offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey or Texas offensive tackle Connor Williams. Remember that Gettleman subscribes to what Tom Coughlin once told him: big men allow you to compete. But also remember the Giants have no intention of picking in the top 5 again for